Hello everyone, and welcome to Boss Rush, the series where I fight all or most of the bosses in a game and discuss them, is the basic concept I have for this series. And this is Ender Lilies. I wanted to play this game for a bit, and I decided to play it and record it, and now I'm making a video on it. And with that very in-depth explanation of the process out of the way, let's transition into the rest of the video. So, Ender Lilies has two types of bosses, the main story bosses and the sub-bosses. The latter are less complicated and much easier to deal with, so I won't be covering them because there isn't any detail to go into. Our first boss of the game is in the tutorial section, so unsurprisingly, this isn't a terribly hard fight. I was initially surprised, though, that she's a two-phase fight. I thought, really? A two-phase fight right at the beginning of the game? But most of the bosses in this game actually have 3 or more phases, so... The first phase is her human form. In this form, she'll mainly swing her dual flail around. This attack isn't too hard to avoid because it can't hit behind her. Once you've almost defeated her, she'll regenerate her health bar and transform into a giant demon bird woman. In this form, she has a jump and smash attack that has a bit of a wonky hitbox and a rush attack. Overall, she's easy to beat, so don't expect to struggle with her. Now, for a damned 180 from the first boss, Garad the Elder Warrior is a fucking tank, and surprisingly difficult for just the second boss. He has a lot of health and his hammer hits very hard. Thankfully, his main attack is easy to dodge in his first phase. His second phase introduces his smashdown attacks that send a shockwave around the impact zone, and a variation of that sends a shockwave traveling the length of the battlefield. This is harder to get a rhythm around, but you'll get it down after a few tries. You want to have as much HP and heals left as possible for his final phase, where he'll turn the aggression up to frickin' 11 and starts darting around like crazy. This will be commonplace for the rest of the game, so get used to it now. Getting a rhythm in his final phase is hard, and honestly, I just pushed through by perfecting the first 2 phases. Our next boss is Eileen, or Eliane, or Elen? I don't fucking know how to pronounce it. I'm going to call her Eileen. Eileen the Dark Witch. Her first phase is pretty simple. She'll launch a single energy ball at you, or launch a spread shot attack, both of which are fairly easy to avoid. This first phase is just a lot of dashing plus jumping to attack. Her second phase gets a bit more difficult. She'll now launch her energy ball attack twice, making it harder to avoid, and usually she'll follow that up with a fire tornado that lingers on the field for a bit. But the strategy is still the same, except now you want to jump after the second energy ball. It's her third phase that really punishes you. In addition to her other attacks, she now ups the spread shot attack to a much wider circumference, and now she adds a thrusting attack to the end of her combos. I got stuck on this phase for a while, but the trick is to anticipate the stab attack and react to it. Once I got that down, she wasn't so hard. Our next boss is Guardian Silva, the sister, I think, to our first boss, Guardian Sigrid. And like her sister, she also does a Vicar Amelia and transforms into a giant demon version of herself. Only difference is she's got 3 phases and she's considerably more difficult. The thing about Silva is she darts all around right off the get-go. She's aggressive and she does a lot of damage. That makes her hard to play around. You can't match her speed or you'll just run into her attacks, but you can't go too slow either because you'll leave yourself open. You have to keep moving just enough to keep with her while also maintaining a safe distance to react to her attacks. Her first phase has just 2 attacks, her hammer smash and a spread shot attack. Gotta focus on dodging her spread shot and reacting to the hammer smash. Her second phase, she amps up the aggression and adds some aerial attacks to her arsenal, but the strategy is mostly the same as her first phase, except now you want to try and anticipate her aerial attack. Her third phase, however, is when shit gets real. Like her sister, she regenerates her health bar and transforms into a giant bird demon woman. She becomes way more aggressive. She keeps her spread shot attack, but adds a slam down and slash attack, both of which trigger without without much notice, but they aren't the biggest threat. You can get into a rhythm and avoid them relatively easily. It's her energy ball attack that can one-shot you, and her red wall of energy towers that can easily drain your HP that are the problem. And while they aren't the hardest to dodge, one slip up and you're fucked. This fight is about controlling your momentum and taking advantage of your opportunities. I can't say I completely got that down, because I beat her by just the skin of my teeth. Our next boss is Honir, Keeper of the Abyss. This is the first real bad fight of the game. It's a boss fight that is less about fighting the actual boss and more about controlling the mobs he sends your way. Thankfully, that isn't all that hard. The enemies that spawn are these axe-wielding knights you'll find in the area leading up to Honir, so you likely have decent experience dealing with them already. These knights teleport to your location and attack, so if you just keep moving, they'll just keep teleporting. This will lead you to occasionally walking right into Honir's attacks, but he does less damage, so Honir himself doesn't do much. He jumps back when you get too close and throws a projectile at you. In his second phase, he'll start doing a jumping projectile attack, and he'll hit you with a fire twister if you get too close. Neither of these are difficult to avoid, and you'll likely only get hit if you're in the middle of dodging one of the knights. His third phase gets much more aggressive and adds a spinning air attack to his arsenal. This is the hardest due to his aggression, but it's still not that hard. The real challenge of this fight is controlling the mob and controlling your temper, because this is not a fun fight. Now we go from one of the most bullshit bosses of the game to arguably the most challenging boss in the game. Ulv the Mad Knight is the first real show of just how well you know the game. His first phase isn't too hard. When you get close, he'll jump back and strike you with his claw. This is easy to anticipate and dodge, though occasionally he'll strike behind him again if you dashed past him, so either be prepared to dash twice or simply dash away from his attacks. He'll also jump in the air and smash down. This is a pretty easy tell as well. This attack also gives you a small but decent window to wail on him for a bit. His second phase is when he starts to show his true strength. He adds a shockwave attack that travels the whole field, and it has a similar tell to his smashdown attack, so you could accidentally dodge into it. But the most significant of them all is this cross-strike attack that deals significant damage to you. This attack is targeted, and while it has a very obvious tell, the attack strikes where you are the moment it triggers. If you didn't catch that, that means you have to dodge it the very instant it triggers. This is easily the hardest attack to dodge, and 1/10 of a second off your timing and you get hit. And of course, his third phase just amps up the intensity of an already intense fight. Now he'll do his shockwave attack twice, he adds a field-wide towering energy attack, and, just for the cherry on top, he'll end his combos with his cross attack. This boss requires absolute precision to beat. And right after that fight, we get the second most challenging boss in this game, though this one is a lot less obvious with how dangerous he is. Julius's attacks are simple and easy to anticipate. He mainly just jabs at you with his lance, either as a single attack or as a charge attack. By now, you should know how to avoid this. Simply dodge past him. But if you dodge too early, he'll immediately turn around towards you, so you have to attack when he's in his attack animation to get the hits in. Sometimes, you'll dash too far and that will limit your damage output. In his second phase, he'll add a stronger charged lance attack, and he'll occasionally jump in the air and come flying down at you, both of which are, again, easy to dodge. The only attack that is hard to avoid is the fire twister attack that he does when you're close. This is the same tell as his regular lance attacks, except for it triggers much quicker, so you just have to assume it could be either and dodge past him. His third phase also isn't much harder, except for the obvious uptick in aggression. He has a massive Kamehameha attack that will immediately drain your health if you don't avoid it, but avoiding it is simple. Just get behind him. When he triggers the attack, he'll get pushed back by the recoil, and occasionally that'll push him into you, but that's not a big deal. It's easy to get into a rhythm with this fight, and his attacks are easy to anticipate. The challenge is keeping the rhythm up long enough without making any mistakes or getting too greedy. Ulv challenges your combat skills, Julius challenges your fortitude. And so we're down to just 2 bosses remaining. The penultimate boss being Miriel the Beloved. This fight is antithetical to the rest of the game. She doesn't dart around, she's not a humanoid, she's a giant, mutant, I don't even know what to call that. She stays static on the left side of the field, spamming attacks at you. Her first phase is easy once you get it down. She has a vomit bomb that will either land in the middle of the field or on the far right side of the field. The further you are, the further the bomb goes. So I just stayed on the far right side spamming my ranged attacks until she vomited up her explosives, then I jumped over them and wailed on her. She also has an energy wave she'll launch to throw you away from her, and that does a little bit of damage, and she also has a dual slash attack, both of which are easy to avoid. Her second phase adds an underground claw attack that I was not a big fan of because it does a lot of damage, but all you gotta do is jump to dodge it. So far, this is not that hard of a fight. Then we come to her third phase, where she does everything in greater numbers, such as launching the ground claw attack multiple times in a row. And on top of everything else, she adds massive fireball volleys. These fireball volleys are a fucking cheap shot. Because of how scattered they get, they can become nearly impossible to dodge. Add this on top of all the other bullshit she's throwing at you, and this final phase is basically an RNG fight. BS aside though, she isn't that difficult. And now we move on to the final boss, which happens to be the game's absolute worst boss. Blighted Lord is a fight that is more about controlling the mobs than it is actually fighting the boss. Where have you heard that before? Except this boss isn't easy by any means. This boss is a course in frustration. The Blighted Lord herself doesn't do much. In her first 2 phases, she has 3 basic attacks. She'll stab down with her claws, this attack can't hit in the middle, and she'll do a sweep attack on either side of the arena depending on where you are. This sweep attack has a bit of an odd hitbox, but it's not that big of a deal. In her second phase, she also adds a traveling shockwave attack. Her third phase introduces this big energy explosion attack. This is almost guaranteed to be a one-shot, but it's easily avoidable by going to the far sides of the arena. In order to damage her, you have to hit her hard, so jump attacking is pretty much 90% of what you'll be doing. This can leave you open to some attacks, but again, she isn't the problem. It's these little alien fish thingies she spawns. They're the problem. These guys do the most damage. Their fireballs can easily kill you in 2 to 3 hits, and she spawns them perpetually, meaning if you don't get rid of them quick enough, you can end up with, say, 3 to 4 on the fucking field at the same time. So you can't ignore them because they're your biggest threat, and even if you did, the chances of you getting hit by their fireballs while attacking the boss get higher and higher the more she spawns them. Oh, and of course, they're not easy to kill. Most of my deaths came from these fuckers and not the actual boss. The actual boss isn't that hard. If you spam Garrod's Spirit attack, you can get into a comfortable rhythm of stunning her and wailing on her. This fight is an absolutely shameful way to end what was a fantastic game up to this point. I mean, what were they thinking here? This has made the game go from an 8 to a 7 for me. I could tolerate a bad boss here and there, but when it's the final boss, that's different. That's the final impression you have of the game, and for Ender Lilies, it's one of frustration. So that's it. That's Ender Lilies. Unless, see, after you beat Miriel, you get your last ability of the game, the one that unlocks these doors, and behind a few of these doors, you'll find the 7 fragments of a tome. Take these back to where you first awoke and unlock the door there, go to the basement and use these tomes to create the Luminous Aegis Curio. If you have that equipped during the final boss, you will get her true form, and gain access to the true ending. Unfortunately, the true Blighted Lord isn't any better. It's simply an extension of the Blighted Lord's third phase, except she adds a grab attack that can catch you off guard, and she adds this energy ball rain, which has a similar RNG factor to the fireball volleys in the Miriel fight. Because really what this final boss needed was a little bit of RNG on top of all the other bullshit. Oh, and by the way, you don't heal between this boss and the Blighted Lord. This fight starts immediately after you finish the Blighted Lord's third phase. So effectively, you have to beat the final boss twice. This boss has the same problems as the first form. The problem is the spawns, and she herself isn't that big of a threat. And I don't know if this was a glitch or not, but she straight up gave up halfway through the fight for me. And with that, we've reached the true ending portion of the video. If you want to do the algorithm engaging thingies, that'd be great. No one's making you, of course. At least not yet. If you subscribe and you want to see my videos the second they're released, go ahead and choose all in the notification settings. And now the video is over. Bye.